All right, Michael Kaskey-Blomain, 97.3 ESPN.com. He's been covering all of this, and we'll get his instant reaction right now. Number one, we got to start with Fultz. Were you shocked that, number one, that they traded him?
No, Mike, I wasn't shocked. Everything that I'd heard leading up to the deal was that they were, willing to trade him. It was just a matter of what was going to come back and if they were, open to getting that return as opposed to holding on to him and holding out hope. And when it came down to it, Elton has showed that he is swinging for the fences. So I wasn't shocked to see that Markelle was moved.
Were you shocked at the return?
I wasn't shocked. I was a little surprised, honestly, considering all that's gone on around Markelle, the fact that he's been out for the bulk of his first two seasons now with a mysterious injury that, no one can really place. There's been no updates. Considering that, the fact that they were able to get, two picks. Now, they're not amazing, but it's a first-round pick from the Thunder that makes up for that first-rounder that they traded to the Clippers in the Tobias deal, a second-rounder. And Jonathan Simmons, who I think could, compared to at least what they have on the roster now, could serve as a rotational piece moving forward. So I think that they, it's obviously not a great haul considering the fact that you traded up to get this guy with the first pick a year ago. But if you consider all the factors of his situation, I was a little bit surprised with what they got. I think Elton did pretty well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, just because there's so many people out there, Michael, that just said, this guy stinks, get rid of him, I don't care what you get. I'm not in that camp. I don't know about you. I think I would have – now, you might know more than me about how they feel about him and his camp, and they might have just been like, you know what, this is over with, let's move on. I think I would have tried to see if he was able to give me something, next year. I don't think what they got in return helps them enough right now, although Simmons is another wing defender. I like what they did with Ennis earlier today. So you give me Ennis and Simmons. All right, you've added a couple more athletic wings that can defend the line. I like that. But I just don't think the Oklahoma City pick, I get it. It recoups the pick they gave to the Clippers. But not enough for me to just give up on this guy who, in my eyes, had talent, just his head was not screwed on straight.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mike. But to be honest, I think the writing was really on the wall, maybe as far back as to when, this past summer, obviously when Brian was replaced with, Brett for the time being and then ultimately Elton. You're obviously, looking at a guy now that didn't make this pick for Markelle. And, Elton at this point has made it clear that the Sixers are going all in. I think the fact that, we've been waiting for these updates on Fultz, since he's been back. We've heard largely nothing from the team. I thought that was kind of, indicative of how they were kind of feeling about him. Everything I've heard for the past few weeks was that they were, feeling out potential offers for him, that there was some mild interest around the league for all the reasons that you said. He's still young. He showed flashes. But I just think there was not a level of confidence in the Sixers organization, from Elton all the way down to Brett, who was asked about Markelle after the Raptors game the other night. It really seemed like he just had no idea about his status and when he would return. I think it was at that point where the Sixers were just ready to cut ties. And also, I think the factor of Markelle's contract, he would be, if they didn't trade him now, he would be on the books for right around $10 million in salary cap space next season into the off season, which is, something that now will be off the books and they could use that money to allocate elsewhere. So I definitely think it was a calculated decision, but I think it was one that the team had come to not all of a sudden just today. I think they were ready to make this move for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you look at it. Here was a guy, and you're at virtually every home game. Here's a guy who was brought in here to be a guy who could shoot the three, guy who can get to the rim, guy who can handle the ball. He could handle the ball, and he was a good defensive player, too. It's another thing. They're lacking a guy who could defend the point, but, he's a much better on-the-ball defender than McConnell, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so he got to the rim. He could score getting to the rim. He was a good defensive player on the ball. Obviously, the shot just wasn't there, and he was a liability late in games. You couldn't have him out there because you didn't want to shoot free throws. But I just feel there was enough there to say, you know what, let's hold on to him for another offseason and maybe. But I guess they felt that getting that first-round pick recoup and a player that could help them maybe right now was just too much for them to kind of pass on. But, I mean, for me, I probably would have held on to him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you there, Mike, but I think also, there's a risk, if you hold on to him, obviously, throughout the rest of this season into the offseason, and he is unable to, regain any form, then at that point, he's virtually untradeable. And also it's something that I think I actually wrote something about this for us a couple months ago. It's just a different timeline. Markelle, you did see flashes from him, and I absolutely agree that he has a lot of tools, even outside of the shot, to be a good NBA player. But I don't think you could argue that it would take a lot of seasoning for him to be to the point where you could rely on him, comfortably to produce and contribute on a championship caliber team like the Sixers have. And I just think that, the Sixers clearly going for it right now, getting veterans, making this finals push, where Markelle, if he had been drafted, in 2015 when we drafted Ja and you had the time to, let him get out there and develop, that would be a different story. But the trajectory that the Sixers are on is just not the same trajectory that Fultz is on. And I think he might benefit from a place, in like Orlando where they're more in a development stage than the Sixers are, and he can, kind of get his bumps and bruises through actual playing time without having to go out there in it.
Michael, you just brought up Ja, and you're seeing him with a little bit of a resurgence. And we've had this debate, Ryan and I, a bunch of times regarding, I hate letting these kids come out of college. I get it. There's a few that can do it, but a lot of them just aren't ready. Even if they have the talent to play, mentally, they're not prepared for what being a grown-up in the NBA is. You're seeing Ja right now kind of come around a little bit. I mean, this guy's been unbelievable down there in New Orleans, the last, month or so. So that's where the whole Markelle thing I get worried about. Like, maybe this kid just wasn't ready to be a professional. You send him down to Orlando, and in 2 years, this guy's ripping threes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think we'll see that from Markelle. To what extent will be the question, but I don't think, I certainly don't think we've seen or heard the last of Markelle Fultz as an NBA player. He brings a lot to the floor, like you said, Mike, outside of the shot, and I think that he will, develop down the line to at least be, a solid contributor. I don't think he might not never live up to the status of being that top pick. But it was just at that point that I think the Sixers were, tired of waiting. They thought they could cash in now, and now it's, the headache is also a factor you have to consider. There's been, constant behind the scenes back and forth with this situation. I think cutting ties with the whole thing was another aspect to get the deal done.
Tell us about Ennis and where he fits in and what he can do.
Just length. Both of those guys, Jonathan Simmons and Tyler Ennis, I think they're guys that are kind of similar to Corey Brewer, actually, if you want to, compare styles of play, guys that can defend.
I said Ennis is Brewer with a shot.
Right, yeah, that's a good way to put it. They're both guys that can, guard a couple positions, get out in transition. Ennis is, capable of knocking down the three. So I think both of those guys, in terms of Simmons and Ennis, fit the mold of, Brett Brown's been a fan of the long, switchy defenders, dating back to, 2013, 2014. So I think both of those guys fit the mold of what, Brett likes in his bench guys and what the Sixers like to do. And I think they'll both, barring, obviously there's still the buyout market to come. But, I think they both could be, legit rotation pieces for the Sixers in the playoffs, especially compared to, what is on the roster on the bench right now.
What's his name? Man, I'm getting old. I can't believe these things. Gasol. I blanked on Gasol's name. Gasol to Toronto. I don't understand it. I mean, is he a huge upgrade over Valanciunas to give away three pieces for?
I don't think so, Mike. To be honest with you, if anything, I don't think the trade's going to make them worse. But looking at the entirety of that trade, I don't think that it necessarily makes them vastly better, especially considering the style that they like to play. Their depth and ability to kind of spread the floor and get out was something that made them, so dangerous. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they sacrificed a little bit of that depth, to get Gasol. He's obviously a great all-star caliber player, but that doesn't necessarily scare me a ton in terms of feeling like the Raptors took a huge step forward after the Sixers made their moves as well.
What about Mirotic going to Milwaukee?
That one hurts a little bit more, Mike. I think that obviously, because that's a target that the Sixers had their eyes on and that would have fit, really nicely. Obviously once they added a little bit less of a option for them, but still a guy that would have fit in nicely off the bench and that fits in, really nicely in Milwaukee. They have really big front court with guys that can, space the floor and rebound and stuff. And I think he'll fit in, really nicely off of Giannis and Chris Middleton and those other guys. So that one, to me, is actually potentially even a little bit more, worrisome for the Sixers than the Marc Gasol trade for the Raptors.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain, lot of stuff happening right now. Wes Matthews is going to sign with Indiana, it looks like. Wayne Ellington looks like he's going to be in the buyout market. Number one, I don't know that Wes Matthews helps Indiana get out of that 5 spot, but they've been playing well even without Oladipo. So that's a loss not to get Matthews. But Wayne Ellington, would you have interest there? Do the Sixers have interest?
Yeah, absolutely. Wayne Ellington is definitely a guy they had their eyes on, and the Wes Matthews one is a little disappointing too. That's another guy that the Sixers definitely had their eyes on in the buyout market. Now he's going to be going to one of their direct competitors, so that's a tough blow. I think that Elkin will really have to Wayne Ellington, a guy like that, a couple other potential guys on the buyout to really make the team feel confident about the depth, moving forward. So I think Ellington definitely. And the Wes Matthews one is, that hurts a little bit.
Anything else happened today the East now, you got Tobias Harris in Philly, Gasol in Toronto, Miritrick in Milwaukee. The Celtics stayed put. How do you see the East now?
An arms race. That's how a lot of people are describing it. It's a little bit tough to rank these teams right now, considering all these moves, and especially considering I think some of these teams will be really aggressive in the buyout market, especially obviously the Sixers. The Sixers starting 5 is as formidable as any other team in the East. So right now, the Raptors and Bucks, I still think, based on depth, probably have the slight edge over the Sixers. But depending on what Elton does on the buyout market, we could be looking at an all-time conference semifinals battles between those 4 teams for sure.
Crazy stuff. It's about 3, bottom of the 3 o'clock hour here. I'm anticipating that's it for the Sixers. They've made all the moves, but the buyout market, keep an eye on that. You never know. I guess they have about another couple minutes to file any paperwork here, but the big news, Fultz traded to Orlando for Jonathan Simmons, a 2020 first-round pick and a second-round pick. And there's a lot of other moves that are happening here. By the way, Sixers are off till tomorrow night, so maybe they can get all these guys in ready to play. They have a press conference coming up today at 5 o'clock, and we'll talk more with Michael Kaskey-Blomain. All right, they went for it, man. Should be fun stretch run here.
Yeah, swinging for the fences for sure.
I'll see you up there tomorrow night.
All right, Mike.